What is up, history buffs? Today we're covering the most embarrassing military defeat in modern history. I am talking about the time Australia, yes, the entire country of Australia, declared war on a bunch of birds and got absolutely destroyed. This isn't a joke, this actually happened. In 1932, the Australian military took machine guns to fight emus and got their asses handed to them by oversized chickens. Before we dive into this peak human stupidity, hit that subscribe button. Picture this. It is 1932, the Great Depression is hitting hard, and Australian farmers are already struggling to make ends meet. Then, suddenly, like something out of a horror movie, 20,000 emus decide to migrate from the interior to Western Australia's farmland. Now, emus aren't your average backyard chickens. These things are basically dinosaurs that forgot to go extinct. They're 6 feet tall, weigh 130 pounds, can run 30 miles per HR, and have zero chill when it comes to destroying crops. Think of them as nature's version of a monster truck rally, except the monster trucks are hungry and have attitude problems. These emus rolled up to the wheat fields like they owned the place and started absolutely demolishing everything. We're talking about birds that could eat 45% of a crop in a single day. The farmers watched their livelihoods get devoured by what basically amounted to a flash mob of feathered terrorists. The farmers tried everything: scarecrows, the emus laughed at them, fences. These birds could jump higher than a basketball player on Red Bull. Poison emus are apparently too smart to fall for that basic trap. It was like trying to stop a zombie apocalypse with a water gun. So the farmers did what any reasonable person would do when facing an invasion of giant birds. They called the military. Because nothing says we've got this under control like asking the army to help you fight poultry. The Australian government looked at this situation and thought, how hard could it be to defeat some birds? This is the same energy as a Karen asking to speak to the manager of nature. They assigned Major GPW Meredith to lead this operation. This poor guy probably thought he was getting the easiest assignment in military history. His mission briefing was literally, take some machine guns, go shoot some birds, come back a hero. It sounded like a weekend hunting trip with extra paperwork. The military showed up with 2 Lewis machine guns, the same weapons they'd used to fight actual human enemies in World War I. These guns could fire 500 rounds per minute and had been designed to mow down German soldiers. Surely they could handle some oversized chickens, right? The confidence was off the charts. Military officials were probably already planning their victory parade. The press was calling it the MU War, like it was some kind of joke. Spoiler alert, the joke was on them. The 2nd of November 1932, the operation officially began. Major Meredith and his team set up their machine guns, loaded their ammunition, and prepared to show these birds who was boss. What could possibly go wrong? Reality check when birds become guerrilla warfare experts here is where things went from confident to catastrophic faster than you can say Big Bird's revenge. First problem. Emus are apparently smarter than the Australian military gave them credit for. These birds had somehow developed tactical awareness that would make Navy SEALs jealous. When they heard the machine guns firing, they didn't panic and run in circles like normal animals. Instead, they scattered into small groups and used guerrilla warfare tactics. I am not making this up. The emus literally outsmarted trained military personnel. They would split up when under fire, making it impossible to hit large groups. They used the terrain to their advantage, hiding behind rocks and bushes. Some even acted as decoys while others flanked the soldiers. These birds had apparently been watching too many war movies. Second problem, emus are built like tanks with feathers. Even when the soldiers managed to hit them, the birds would just keep running. Major Meredith reported that it took multiple direct hits to bring down a single emu. These things had more durability than a Nokia phone. The soldiers were burning through ammunition like it was going out of style, but the emu casualties were embarrassingly low. After the first day, they'd fired hundreds of rounds and killed maybe a dozen birds. The emus, meanwhile, were probably having group meetings to plan their next move. Day 2 was somehow even worse. The emus had apparently learned from day 1 and upgraded their tactics. They started using hit-and-run strategies, appearing just long enough to destroy crops before disappearing when the soldiers showed up. The military tried mounting the machine guns on trucks to chase the emus. This sounds like it should have worked. Right, wrong. The emus could outrun the trucks on rough terrain, and shooting accurately from a moving vehicle while chasing giant birds turned out to be harder than Call of Duty made it look. Picture this scene: Australian soldiers in military trucks bouncing across farmland, trying to machine gun giant birds that are running in zigzag patterns, like they're dodging sniper fire. The emus were basically playing real-life Frogger and winning. The press started having a field day. Newspapers were running headlines like "Emus win again" and "Birds defeat army." International media picked up the story, and suddenly Australia was the laughingstock of the world. The country that had survived World War I was getting owned by oversized chickens. Major Meredith was probably questioning every life choice that led him to this moment. His military career had gone from respectable officer to the guy who lost to birds in less than a week. The strategic withdrawal, aka admitting defeat after 6 days of this absolute disaster. The military made the smart decision to cut their losses and retreat. They'd fired over 2,500 rounds of ammunition and killed approximately 50 emus. That is 50 bullets per bird, which is worse accuracy than a stormtrooper in Star Wars. The official report tried to spin this as a tactical withdrawal, but everyone knew the truth. Australia had just lost a war to birds. The emus had successfully defended their territory using superior tactics, better mobility, and apparently higher intelligence than the humans trying to kill them. The farmers were still dealing with crop destruction, the military was embarrassed beyond belief, and the emus were probably celebrating their victory with whatever emus do when they party. The birds had won so decisively that they didn't even need to negotiate a peace treaty. Major Meredith's final report was basically a military version of, "It is not you, it is me." He blamed the terrain, the weather, the equipment, everything except the obvious truth that they had been outmaneuvered by birds with walnut-sized brains. You'd think this would be the end of the story, but humans are nothing if not persistent in their stupidity. A few weeks later, the farmers convinced the government to try again, because clearly the problem wasn't the strategy, it was the execution. This time they brought more ammunition and better planning. They were going to show those emus who was really in charge. The confidence was back, the machine guns were loaded, and round 2 of human versus bird was about to begin. Spoiler alert, it went exactly as well as you'd expect. The emus had apparently used their victory break to level up their tactics even more. They were now operating like a coordinated resistance movement. They'd learned the soldiers' patterns, figured out the range of the machine guns, and developed counter strategies that would make military strategists weep. The second campaign lasted longer, but was somehow even less successful. The soldiers managed to kill a few more emus. But the birds were still winning the war of attrition. For every emu killed, dozens more continued destroying crops while the military burned through ammunition, like they were trying to single-handedly support the weapons industry. By December 1932, the Australian government finally admitted what everyone already knew: they couldn't win a war against emus. The military officially withdrew. The farmers were left to deal with the bird problem on their own, and the emus continued their crop-destroying rampage like nothing had happened. The final casualty count was devastating for human pride. Approximately 986 emus killed versus thousands of dollars in ammunition costs. International embarrassment. And the complete destruction of Australia's military reputation. The emus had won so thoroughly that they didn't even need to occupy territory, they already controlled it. The government tried to save face by offering bounties for dead emus, essentially outsourcing the war to civilian hunters. This actually worked better than the military operation, which tells you everything you need to know about the tactical genius of the Australian Army in 1932. The farmers eventually found other solutions, better fencing, different farming techniques, and accepting that sometimes nature wins. The emus went back to their normal migration patterns, probably passing down stories of their great victory to future generations. The Great Emu War became one of those historical events that is so ridiculous it sounds made up. But it is 100% real. It is taught in military academies as an example of how not to conduct operations. And it has become a meme before memes were even a thing. The story highlights several important lessons about overconfidence, understanding your enemy, and the dangers of underestimating nature. The Australian military learned that sometimes the best strategy is knowing when not to fight at all. International relations were probably awkward for a while. Imagine being an Australian diplomat trying to negotiate military alliances after your country lost a war to birds. Yes, we'd love to help with your defense strategy, but first, Let us tell you about the time we got defeated by emus. The emus, meanwhile, became legendary. They're probably the only animals in history to have an official military victory against a modern army. They should have gotten medals, but birds don't really care about human recognition systems. Sun conclusion. When nature writes the history books. So there you have it, the Great Emu War, where Australia's military got absolutely schooled by birds with better tactical awareness than trained soldiers. This wasn't just a defeat. It was a masterclass in how overconfidence and poor planning can turn a simple pest control operation into an international embarrassment. The lessons here are timeless. Respect your opponent, understand the terrain, and maybe don't declare war on animals that have been surviving in harsh environments for millions of years. The emus didn't win because they were lucky, they won because they were better adapted, more flexible, and apparently smarter than the humans trying to kill them. This story proves that sometimes the most ridiculous historical events teach us the most important lessons. Nature doesn't care about your military training, your advanced weapons, or your human pride. Sometimes a bunch of birds with attitude problems can humble an entire nation. And that is Wacky History for you, where we dig up the stories that make you question everything you thought you knew about human intelligence. If you enjoyed learning about Australia's most embarrassing military defeat, smash that subscribe button, because next week we're covering the time the US military spent millions trying to train psychic soldiers. Spoiler alert, it went about as well as you'd expect. Remember, history isn't just about the victories, sometimes the most entertaining stories come from the epic fails. See you next time, and try not to start any wars with local wildlife.